Medieval exercise. Now, despite the fact that exercise during the medieval period is fairly well documented, there are people in the modern world who have come to the conclusion that medieval people did not exercise because they simply didn't need to. But this is just not the case. Now, obviously, exercise during the medieval period was not the same as exercise in the modern world. For members of the peasantry, exercise came in the form of sports and games, and the voluntary physical movements involved in these activities would offer relief from the unnatural movements involved in the back-breaking labour they took part in. Now, exercise for knights and monks, however, was a little bit different. These lads would exercise to build strength of body and to help fight against disease, against plague, and because they also believed that it was a high and noble practice, which ultimately would strengthen the unity between a man and his creator. As I mentioned earlier, exercise in the medieval period was not the same as exercise in the modern world. The objectives were quite different. Knights and monks were not training for muscular hypertrophy like a modern-day bodybuilder, but for general all-round strength of body. Now, having said that though, there are some of these medieval exercise practices that closely parallel modern-day exercise practices, like yoga. Another example would be monks would keep a stone weighing around 30 pounds with a steel ring embedded into it, and they would carry that stone about their dwelling. And this is not too dissimilar to the modern-day kettlebell. Another exercise the monks would do is the practice of taking a big thick rope covered in knots and hanging it from the ceiling and simply just holding their body weight up above the ground until they tire. Now, some of the exercise practices that young knights in training might take part in include the pushing, lifting and throwing of great heavy stones. And then we have the practice of taking a great big stick or pole just like this one and throwing it just like a javelin. And then we have medieval exercise practices which require more than one person. For example, the knightly practice of wrestling. And then we have exercises which involve two people sitting on the ground, and what they'll do is they will place their feet together and hold on to either a rope or a stick and simply try to heave one another up. Young apprentice knights in training had to endure rigorous exercise practices. The 14th century French knight known as Boucicaut actually documented many of these practices, and I'll talk about a few of these later on towards the end of the video, and I'll even give a few of them a try myself. Exercise during the medieval period was actually promoted by church leaders and monks, but I find it fairly amusing that some doctors of the period do not seem too keen on promoting exercise for health. They seem far more interested in the medicines they can provide. Suppose some things will never change, eh? And this is confirmed by the Scottish physician Bernard Gordon in his 1308 treatise on fitness, where he writes, "It is most shocking that physicians of our time do not care to know the regimen of health, because they do not consider it lucrative, whereas they are quite concerned in the treatment of diseases." Right, so I'm out here in the Greenwood, in the legendary Sherwood Forest, and I've got very limited equipment. All I've got is a gret stone that weighs around 30 kilos, or around 66 pounds, and this big old quarterstaff. But nevertheless, let's give some of these nightly exercises a go and see how we get on. So firstly, I'm going to start with the stone, and a very simple exercise practice this one. All I'm going to do is pick it up and walk it round the Greenwood until I get tired. Right, that was a steady 10-mile walk round Greenwood to warm up. Now it's on to the next exercise. Another very simple exercise practice, and this time I'm lifting the stone above my head and simply holding it in place until I get tired. And you'll notice the obvious parallels between this exercise and modern day isometric exercises. And once I've had enough on this side, I will switch to the left side. being careful not to drop the stone on my head. So last one now with the stone, and again, very simply, all I'm doing here is standing in place, nice firm base, and just launching it as far as I can. Oh, Little John always beats me on this one. And same again on the left side. Then, to finish off, I'm going to be launching my quarterstaff as far as I can, like a javelin. Let's have it. Oh, I'm absolutely terrible with my left hand. I mentioned earlier about the French knight Boucicaut, and some of the exercise practices which he outlined for young knights in training involved wearing what they would wear whilst on the battlefield and performing a variety of physical movements. Now, he actually says you are to dance vigorously whilst wearing a shirt of steel. So I've got myself a shirt of steel. All that remains now is to dance vigorously. Go on, lad. Oh, sod this. I'll be honest with you, I'm not much of a dancer myself. I don't really like it. So we'll not do the dancing. Must be a French thing, that. We'll just go for a jog instead, eh? So I've got my shirt of steel, otherwise known as a mail shirt. Interestingly enough, this is the one I wore at the Battle of Borough Bridge in 1322, but that is a story for another day. Another one of the exercises outlined by Boucicaut for when you're wearing armour was to climb without the use of your legs. So I'm going to go and climb up that wicked looking tree behind me. Oh. Well, there you go, some medieval nightly exercise practices. But I must say, if you are going to try any of these yourselves, please do be careful, especially when you're chucking great heavy stones around and great massive sticks. Right, gotta get down now. That is all for today, my friends. I would like to give a massive shout out and a huge thank you to the physical culture historians, whose wonderful video provides some excellent sources for this particular subject. And as always, I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining me here in medieval England. Herne protect us. Oh.